Imagine hopping into your car, strapping on your seatbelt, and hitting the highway at exactly 100 kilometers per hour.
Okay, I'm with you. Sounds like a nice drive.
Right. You've got a full tank of gas, a perfectly open road, and you decide you're going to drive continuously to cover the exact distance that light travels in just one single year.
Oh, wow. Okay. So a light year road trip.
Exactly. Want to guess how long you'd be gripping that steering wheel?
I mean, I know light is fast, so millions of years,
Try 10.8 million years?
10.8 million years just driving.
Yeah, day and night without a single coffee break just across one light year.
The human mind it isn't built to process a number like that, in
Right.
relation to a regular physical commute.
It completely breaks the brain. And that staggering, just unimaginable scale, that's actually the exact starting point of a deeply thought-provoking, almost like reality-bending essay we are exploring today.
Yeah, this one is a really fascinating piece.
It is. The piece is titled How to Enjoy a Heavenly Life in Prison, and it was written by Su Feng in March of 2025.
And the author is attempting a massive philosophical undertaking here. The text weaves together cosmic mathematics, concepts borrowed from quantum physics, and these really radical principles of spiritual detachment.
It was dense.
It is a very dense, intricate conceptual landscape.
It really is. And just to set the stage for you, the listener, because this essay radically redefines everything from, well, the institution of marriage to the scientific method as literal prisons, our goal today isn't to validate these controversial claims.
Right, right. We're not endorsing this specific worldview. We're taking sides here.
Exactly. We are just stepping completely inside this philosophical framework to see how its internal mechanics operate. We really want to understand how the author reconstructs our physical reality and the very concept of what it means to be free.
It requires a total shift in perspective.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the prison, we first have to understand the universe it floats in. The essay induces a kind of immediate intellectual vertigo by zooming out to a scale that makes that 10 million year car ride look like a quick trip to the mailbox.
Yeah, the author starts with our local neighborhood, the Milky Way galaxy, reminding the reader that it's roughly 100,000 light years in diameter.
Which is already huge.
Massive. It holds hundreds of billions of sun-like stars and hundreds of billions of Earth-like planets. But the essay introduces this just to set a baseline, only to immediately shatter it.
Right, they use this incredible Russian nesting ball structure to keep pushing the boundaries of scale.
Yeah.
The text asks you to picture a universe-scale structure called the Spiral River Galaxy. And if that massive galaxy were the size of a standard football field, our entire Milky Way with all its hundreds of billions of planets would be nothing more than a single grain of sand sitting somewhere on the grass.
And this deliberate stripping away of the anthropocentric ego, that's basically the engine of the entire essay.
It just keeps going.
It does. The author doesn't stop at the Spiral River Galaxy. That football field-sized structure is then reduced to, well, another grain of sand within an even larger, more incomprehensible structure called the Dharma Spiral River Galaxy.
And that word dharma is really important there.
It is crucial. In various spiritual traditions, Dharma points to a cosmic law or an underlying truth. So by applying it to a galactic structure, the author is implying a universe that scales up not just in physical matter, but in, like, a spiritual hierarchy.
Wow.
And even that Dharma Spiral Galaxy is just a tiny fragment of what the text calls the Earth universe. So Earth itself is mathematically reduced to something smaller than a microscopic speck of dust.
It's just wild. And the essay applies that same brutal reduction to time, too. The author argues that in this grand cosmic timeline, an entire human lifetime is less than 1/10,000th of a single lightning flash.
10,000.
Yeah. I was trying to wrap my head around that, and it's like stressing out over a typo in a text message, but that text message is floating inside a galaxy-sized supercomputer.
That's a great analogy.
But look at the mechanism there. Doesn't realizing our lives are shorter than a fraction of a lightning flash make human existence totally meaningless? Like, why even bother getting out of bed if our entire lifespan doesn't even register on the cosmic clock?
Well, see, the author actually anticipates that existential dread and flips it. They turn it into a tool for liberation.
How so?
The concept of cosmic insignificance isn't meant to induce despair. It's meant to highlight the utter absurdity of human conflict. The text explicitly challenges the reader. It asks, why waste your energy debating the trivialities of life in the middle of a lightning flash?
Right.
Why fight for territory on a snail's horn? When you truly internalize the scale of that Dharma spiral galaxy, the argument you had with your boss, or your anxiety about social status, it just becomes mathematically irrelevant.
So the macrocosm is actively deployed to neutralize the anxieties of the microcosm.
Precisely.
Which brings us to a massive pivot. If human life is so incredibly small and so unimaginably brief, why do we constantly feel so weighed down by it? Like if we are just a fraction of a lightning flash, why does a random Tuesday afternoon feel so heavy?
And the author's answer to that requires a complete paradigm shift.
So what does this all mean?
Well, we feel trapped because Earth itself is literally a massive prison.
And the text treats the word prison as a strict functional reality, not just some poetic metaphor.
Exactly. The author defines a prison as any place that confines you and prevents your escape. Therefore, by the internal logic of the essay, every single person born on this planet is, in essence, a prisoner living in a grand terrestrial panopticon.
A terrestrial panopticon. And the author breaks this down into three distinct escalating layers. The first layer is the easiest to grasp. It's prisons that confine the physical body.
Like literal jails.
Right, literal incarceration in a cell. But it also includes national borders, countries that legally prohibit you from leaving. Even gravity itself is framed as this unyielding warden. We all understand physical confinement.
Sure.
But the second layer is where the text actively attacks modern societal norms. The author defines prisons that confine the spirit. And under this category, they list emotional entanglements, financial debt, family obligations, and the institution of marriage.
Categorizing the very bonds that most people consider the foundation of a meaningful life as spiritual shackles? I mean, that is highly provocative.
I really have to push back on this. Because building a family, finding a partner to share your life with for most of human history, that's the antidote to the coldness of the universe. It's what gives us warmth. How does the author justify framing love and connection as a trap?
To understand the reasoning, we have to look at how the author views the soul. In this framework, the soul is inherently boundless. Its natural state is infinite exploration. So when you form deep emotional attachments, like building a family, you are binding your emotional and spiritual energy to a handful of specific biological units in one microscopic coordinate of the universe.
Oh, I see.
You're tying your happiness to their physical well-being. If life is a fraction of a lightning flash, investing all your spiritual capital into something so temporary and fragile tethers your boundless soul to the anxieties of the physical plane.
It's an anchor, like a beautiful, comforting anchor, perhaps, but it fundamentally stops the ship from sailing.
Exactly. The author argues that you cannot be truly free if your spiritual state is dependent on the survival and behavior of other mortals, which leads directly into the third and honestly most extreme layer prisons that confine the soul.
Right.
Here the author lists societal ethics, law, morality, science, religion, and even knowledge itself.
Okay, wait. Framing science and knowledge as prisons? I mean, science gave us antibiotics, space travel, and the very mathematics the author uses to describe the Milky Way. How is the pursuit of understanding a cage?
The mechanism of confinement here is methodology. Science is undeniably powerful, but it demands empirical proof. It requires data that can be measured, observed, and validated by physical instruments.
Right, the scientific method.
Yes. So in the author's view, science is a masterclass in studying the bars of our cell. It maps the physical world perfectly. But because science refuses to acknowledge anything it cannot physically measure, it effectively builds a ceiling over human consciousness. It tells the soul, if I can't prove it in a lab, it doesn't exist.
So it limits reality to the 5 physical senses.
Precisely. And morality and societal ethics function similarly. They are transient, human-made behavioral constraints designed to keep a terrestrial society functioning. They're useful for managing biological prisoners, but they artificially limit the boundless nature of the soul.
Even traditional religion is framed as prison here, right?
Yes, often replacing true spiritual freedom with rigid dogma and earthly hierarchies. To grasp the author's definition of true freedom, you really have to stop viewing these institutions as the safety nets of civilization and start viewing them as the invisible walls of a deeply sophisticated cage.
So what does this all mean for us? If Earth is a multi-layered prison, and everything from our physical bodies to our spouses to our pursuit of scientific knowledge is keeping us locked inside, how on earth do we break out?
That is the big question.
This leads us into the mechanics of spiritual escape. And Surprisingly, the essay doesn't rely purely on ancient mysticism here. It brings in quantum mechanics.
The synthesis of lexicons is one of the most fascinating structural choices in the text.
Yeah.
The author points to the real-world phenomena of quantum physics, specifically citing spooky action at a distance. This is the principle of quantum entanglement, where two particles become linked. If you measure the state of one particle, the other instantly collapses into a corresponding state, even if they're light years apart.
It's instantaneous.
Right. Information, or influence, transfers instantaneously, completely bypassing the classical speed of light.
Einstein famously hated the idea because it broke his rules of the universe, but quantum physicists prove it every day in the lab. And the essay used this quantum reality to contrast with our 10-million-year road trip from the beginning of the discussion. While your physical body is bound by classical Newtonian physics, the author posits that a truly free soul operates as a quantum phenomenon.
The physical body in a car takes an eternity to move through space. But consciousness, unbound by the prisons of the spirit and soul, isn't traveling through physical space. It operates on the principle of entanglement. Distance becomes entirely irrelevant.
So instead of taking a road trip, the soul is basically shifting its coordinates across a cosmic quantum field.
Exactly.
And the author doesn't just leave this as a vague concept of floating in an empty void. They provide highly specific celestial destinations. They claim these places exist out there right now.
Yeah, the specificity is striking.
First, there is a planet 960 light-years away from Earth. The author states it is 10 times larger than our planet and 10 times more beautiful.
The text also details another planet, 3,480 light-years away. This one is 16 times larger than Earth, described as incredibly fantastical and perfectly suited for habitation.
And the ultimate destination is the celestial islands continent of the Elysium world. The text describes this as a paradise 3 times the size of the entire Milky Way galaxy, filled with indescribable wonders. But practically speaking, how does one actually punch in the coordinates for these specific planets? Like if my consciousness is the teleportation device, where is the instruction manual?
Well, the author connects this quantum travel to the journey of what they call a Chanyuan celestial. A Chanyuan celestial is essentially the author's term for an active practitioner of this philosophy, someone who is actively dismantling their terrestrial prisons.
Got it.
The goal of the Chanyuan celestial is to set their sights on these higher realms, which the text refers to as the 1,000-year world and the 10,000-year world. By fundamentally altering the frequency of their consciousness, they aim to become entangled with these higher celestial destinations, rather than the heavy, dense reality of Earth.
It is an incredible attempt to bridge the gap between cutting-edge physics and ancient spiritual cosmology. But let's bring this back down to the ground. We can't all just vanish into the ether today.
Sure.
If someone is sitting in traffic right now, worried about their mortgage, which the author insists is a spiritual prison, how do they achieve this freedom while their physical body is still very much stuck on this planet?
Right.
The essay pivots from grand cosmic travel to some very immediate practical mindset shifts. It introduces the core mechanism for survival, which is formless thinking.
Formless thinking is the actionable crux of the entire philosophy. To explain it, the author leans on a famous Buddhist text regarding the Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara. The quote says that when practicing deep wisdom, the Bodhisattva perceived that all 5 aggregates were empty and thereby overcame all suffering and distress.
Let's define those 5 aggregates for our listener because it's a really vital piece of the puzzle. In Buddhist thought, the aggregates are essentially the psychological hardware that makes up a human being. It's form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. They are the biological data processors we use to understand reality.
And the author takes that ancient wisdom and translates it into a stark, almost brutal modern command. The instruction is to actively and consciously reject the data coming from those processors. The essay states explicitly, do not believe what your eyes see, what your ears hear, what your nose smells, what your tongue tastes, or what your body touches.
Wow.
You must only believe what the soul perceives.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a bit difficult to swallow. It's one thing to say, ignore your 5 senses when you're sitting comfortably in a quiet room.
Sure.
But if I drop a brick on my foot, or I'm eating a terrible meal, or dealing with chronic physical pain, formless thinking doesn't magically stop my nervous system from firing pain signals to my brain. It sounds a bit like forced psychological dissociation. How do you actually convince your brain to ignore a harsh physical reality and rely purely on this invisible soul perception?
It's a vital critique. But the author isn't suggesting that the physical nervous system stops working. A brick dropping on your foot will hurt.
Uh-huh.
But formless thinking is about severing the link between physical sensation and your core identity.
Okay.
The author circles back to the very beginning of the essay to solve this. You achieve detachment by constantly holding on to the perspective of the lightning flash.
Ah, applying the macro scale in real time.
Exactly that. If you truly internalize that your entire lifespan is just a microscopic blip in the Dharma spiral galaxy, then the pain of the brick on your foot, the embarrassment of a failure, or the physical walls of a literal prison cell, they are fundamentally fleeting holograms.
They don't matter.
Right. They are happening to the physical avatar, not the boundless soul. The author presents an ultimate dichotomy to drive this home. Picture a person with immense wealth. They live in a sprawling mansion, drive a luxury car. Their physical senses are constantly gratified with the finest foods.
But according to the text, if their soul is terrified of losing that wealth, if they are bogged down by societal expectations, debt, and the fear of mortality, they are merely a prisoner in a very comfortable velvet-lined cell.
Exactly. While conversely, the text argues a person could be barefoot, eating a meager bowl of rice in a drafty thatched hut.
Mm.
Or, the essay explicitly notes, they could be watched and reprimanded by armed guards in a literal physical prison. But if that person has embraced formless thinking, if they've detached their identity from the physical data of their surroundings, they are already a celestial being.
So, formless thinking is essentially weaponizing the realization of our own insignificance to make us invincible to physical suffering.
The text is highly empowering in that specific regard. It argues that paradise isn't just a physical location you eventually teleport to. It is a state of absolute, unshakable spiritual detachment that you generate within yourself right now. If the core of your being is quantum, the physical environment cannot dictate your joy. You can literally inhabit the Elysium world while sitting on the floor of a prison.
That is a remarkably powerful way to reframe human adversity. It demands a complete overhaul of how we define our reality. So, to pull all these massive threads together, we started this journey by zooming out to the terrifying, unimaginable scale of the Dharma spiral galaxy, reducing all of human history to a fraction of a lightning flash.
We then explored the author's central thesis, that Earth is a multi-layered prison, dissecting how our attachments, from our physical bodies down to our deepest family bonds and our scientific methodologies, are the invisible bars keeping our souls confined to this microscopic speck of dust.
And finally, we looked at the escape route. The text proposes using the quantum nature of consciousness to traverse the cosmos instantaneously to places like the Elysium world. A journey made possible in the present moment by embracing formless thinking, the ultimate rejection of the five physical senses, and the mastery of spiritual detachment. It is a sweeping, radical philosophy that demands you reconsider every single tether you have to the physical world.
It completely challenges the utility of the things modern society strives for. Comfort, legacy, empirical knowledge, all reframed as weights around the ankles of the soul.
Which brings us back to you, our listener. We know you tune in because you have a deep desire for knowledge and a passion for understanding the complex mechanics of the world around us. You are a learner. But this text asks you to look at the foundations of your intellectual life and ask if they are actually walls. And that leads to one final, provocative thought we want to leave you with. A thought that builds directly on the source material but points the mirror right back at us.
The paradox of the intellect.
Right. In the essay, the author explicitly lists knowledge as one of the deep prisons that confines the soul. So for you, our listener, who actively seeks out complex topics, who loves consuming information to make sense of the universe, is the very act of seeking knowledge building the invisible bars of your own spiritual prison.
By trying to mentally map the universe, are you accidentally tethering yourself to it?
To truly be free, as the author defines it, do we eventually have to unlearn everything we know?
It is a profound paradox that sits right at the heart of the pursuit of wisdom.
Something to chew on the next time you jump in your car, turn the key, and think about how far you have to drive. Just remember, at 100 kilometers an hour, you're looking at 10.8 million years to cross a single light year. Or you could just drop the keys, detach from the physical realm, and arrive instantaneously. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the mechanics of a truly radical perspective. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening.